Okay. So it's Wednesday, June 30th, when we're starting this next episode of our podcast.
Right. So I guess we could just start off with I guess one of the bigger news is Giannis's injury from
Hmm.
game. I guess it was game four
Yeah,
of
that
Atlanta.
yeah,
Yeah.
that leg bent like a one of those plastic rulers sometimes people use as like in class when you use it
Yeah.
with the springboard. It's like one of those plastic rulers, it just went the other way.
Right. Like I think they called it a hyperextension of the knee.
Yeah.
So I guess like it's not as I mean it's bad, but it's not as bad as it looked in the recording or like the video because it looked like his knee just went backwards, but at least
Hmm.
he was able to walk.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
And
it
a
kind of
part of it
just,
is like
yeah,
it's like I mean for you or I or some normal person, like when your knee goes in that direction, that's over. Like, in terms of an
right.
injury, that's usually a break or at least a rip of some kind of the muscle or maybe breaking the bone or at the joint some dislocation. But for him, it's just a hyperextension and he's back the next day. It just, I guess, is a testament to how conditioned these sorts of athletes are. That one's knee could be flexing the other direction and they would be just having a hyperextension.
Yeah, and I think this is just like, I mean, it adds to the injuries, right? Like,
Hmm.
you got Kawhi out, you got Trey Young, who was
Hmm.
out of yesterday's game,
Yeah.
now Giannis. So, I mean, partially it's because of, like we talked about, like,
Hmm.
partially it's because of the shortened or this rushed season,
Yeah.
but also it's just, I guess it happens during the playoffs. Like 2 years back, KD just like got injured like three times basically in one
Hmm.
playoff. So it happens. It's just unfortunate that it's happening, especially for teams like Atlanta, Milwaukee, and even Phoenix when Chris Paul was out due to COVID. It's like this is basically their only time they probably have a chance to win the championship because once
Right.
the good teams
It's
come back, they're not getting there again.
yeah, it seems like everything is falling down in the Suns' path
Right.
to the championship. It's like everyone's just falling left and right. Even when CP3 was injured against the Lakers, he came back, put on a clinic against Denver.
Right.
Um, uh, and so it seemed like just when his injury bug is starting to go away, everyone else's injury bug is starting to come on. It's like, okay, we've tortured you for the past, what, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. Is it? Oh, he came
I think
in 2005 or something like that.
oh, yeah, I think it was yeah around that time,
Around that time. So
2005 or
yeah, 15, yeah,
2006.
15 or so years. You've been hit with the bad luck, the injuries, and now it's time to give everyone else the bad luck and injuries.
Right. And I mean, I yeah, it's like yeah, especially for Chris Paul, like
Mm-hmm.
he is not getting here again. Like this is his chance. He
Yeah.
blew it. I mean, he had a chance with the Clippers. He blew a 3-1 lead in the semis. Chance with the Rockets. He got injured, and I think it's safe to assume if he hadn't gotten injured with the Rockets, they probably would have won over the Warriors that
Mm-hmm.
year.
Well,
And
I don't know.
so, well, I mean, it would have been tighter. It would have been a
Yeah.
tighter series towards the end
Mm-hmm.
because they were up 3-2, right? So,
Yeah.
and then now, again, he's up 3-2. We don't know what's going to happen in game six, but if he blows this chance as well, I don't know if okay, he shouldn't retire from basketball, but can you really go another season?
I mean,
Like,
okay, well, you can't just tell a person, okay, you had your chances, now get out of here, retire. But what I would say is like the way his career has gone, the trajectory, how you always thought that you were reaching the climax, whether it be with the Clippers. Okay, he was on the New Orleans Pelicans. He had one of the best rookie seasons ever.
yeah,
He had a crazy upside to him. He had a great floor as well. He could raise the team's floor very easily. And so, but he was on a bad team. And so you get
right.
him out of there, you get him onto the Clippers and you think this is it. You got Blake Griffin, who's an all-star. You have Lob City.
Mhm.
You think that the Spurs are on their way out, that after the Clippers beat the Spurs in a game early on
Game
in the
7.
first round
Yeah.
many years ago. You think this is the hump, they got over it. Now it's their time. This is going to be their era. They choke the lead against the Rockets.
Yeah.
And the Rockets are the ones who then have to face the Warriors, the up and
And then
rising Warriors of 2015.
they
And
lose
then
3-1.
suddenly it's the Warriors it's their time to shine.
Right.
Um, yeah. And so you think, okay, so that was the first precipice. You thought that was it. And then he gets traded to the Rockets. And then now you think, okay, now he's got an MVP. He's got James Harden. He's got this extremely efficient scorer on his team. CP3 is good at defense. He can help raise the floor of that team as well by allowing them to be more of a
Right.
better team defensively. And you think they're going to beat this Warriors team. If there's anyone who can beat the KD, Steph, Draymond, Clay Warriors team, it is going to be this Rockets team.
Right. I mean, the style was all good, and I think they were probably, if they had moved past the Warriors, I
Yeah, they would
think
have
they
won.
probably would have beaten LeBron
Yeah, for sure.
that year, just
Hmm.
like the Warriors did.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as big as a beatdown because, like, like sports, like there's certain teams that are built to beat specific teams,
Yeah.
and the Rockets were built specifically to beat the Warriors.
Hmm.
So they wouldn't have necessarily beat LeBron that well that year. It wouldn't have been a blowout like Golden State did, but obviously they would have still beaten LeBron because they were the better team.
Hmm.
So I mean, but yeah, they were built specifically for that, and they got the lead 3-2,
Hmm.
and then that goes over. And the next year, Chris Paul comes back, but it's not the same because James Harden is doesn't fit as well anymore because he
Yeah.
wants a bigger role. Chris Paul wants a
They
bigger role,
they
and
get
they
rid
lose
of
in the second round.
I think they get rid of Clint Capella that year,
Yeah,
and so they lose a lot of size, and so KD goes down in game
game.
5
Oh
of
yeah,
that
yeah,
series. You think now, at least now, because KD at
he's
least
out.
is a defensive presence, you think KD goes down. This Warriors team cannot win. The Warriors go on to win the games to close out the series against the Rockets, and then you realize,
Right,
oh, maybe it's due to the chemistry issue that akin to the Lakers back in the early 2000s with Shaq and Kobe, that these two, Harden and Chris Paul, just maybe don't want to work with each other, and that's impeding their relationship, the success of the team. And
right,
right. And so you think each and every time you get near this climax and you think this is where Chris Paul is going to break through. He's going to get his
mhm,
championship. He's a great player. He deserves it. He has all the ratings. He has the defensive and offensive talent in order to get there.
right,
But it always breaks down. And now with the Suns team, after being cast away to OKC, he ends up in OKC. They overperform.
right.
They almost take out the Rockets with
In
James Harden and
in
an
first round too.
aging, less effective Russell Westbrook. And you think that this is the time. Like, okay, so Chris Paul is not done yet. Maybe he is worth at least a part of his extremely large contract. They
Right.
send him to the Suns where they think, okay, the Suns are not going to be able to do anything. The Suns are a bad team. He's just going to rot away there. I guess he's just going to retire.
I mean,
And they,
I think the reason they sent him to the Suns though, because remember the Suns went 8-0 in the bubble, right? There was
Mhm.
all that Suns hype.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I don't think people expected the Suns to be this good,
right.
but people thought Suns would make the playoffs, maybe
Mhm.
like a fourth or fifth seed, similar to the Rockets, except the Suns have more talent to actually
Mhm.
compete,
Yeah,
more competitive year.
right. And so it seems like from the most unlikely circumstance, the one where he was essentially cast away from instead of forced to go towards, he wanted to go to the Clippers. He wanted to go to the Rockets. It's not like he was an afterthought. Now he is sent to the Suns and suddenly this is his best shot. It seems like everyone else has literally like fallen away, literally
Right.
falling down and breaking
I mean,
whatever is
every
required.
series, right? Like every series he's played this year,
Hmm.
the best or the second best players missing. Like
Right.
Lakers, you got 80 missing
Hmm.
the last two games.
Right.
Nuggets, you got Jamal Murray missing.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got now Kawhi missing. So I guess he got some lucky breaks. And I think his path is similar to that of Giannis, right? Like we talked about his injury, but I think Giannis is going down the similar path.
Mm-hmm.
Like after he just literally lost game, he was injured after that third quarter. They
Mm-hmm.
made it close, but his team still lost that game
Mm-hmm.
against the Hawks in game 4, right? It's like a similar path because his first MVP year, Kawhi is just became the Giannis stopper in the conference finals.
Yeah.
The next year, it's the bubble season. Jimmy Butler becomes the Giannis stopper.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they finally have a chance, and then Giannis becomes the Giannis
Yeah.
stopper.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just a similar thing where someone or something is just blocking their pathway. You know, there's just a lot of discussion about, like, how can you lose such a game against such a depleted team
Mm-hmm.
where you got this rookie or maybe even second year player like Kevin Herter just absolutely balling out, Drew
Yeah.
Holiday turning into Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton just disappears after one of the best fourth quarters in game 3, right? So I think that also comes to the point of Budenholzer. He's a very up and down coach, and I think
I think
they,
he's just down. Like in the regular
I,
season, I think the talent of their team is enough for them to perform really well. And he comes up with the scheme like one that he relies on. It's good. He plans a lot. He takes the scheme. It pulls him through the regular season. By the time you reach the playoffs, people realize, okay, so this is what he's doing. We don't want him to win anymore. Let's plan our entire series around that. In the regular season, you don't have to plan around a certain team for an extended period of time. After you can just lose one game, you don't have to plan so much against that team
right,
because of the certain scheme. But once you're playing a series, you're like, okay, let's plan around beating this team as opposed to
right,
just playing the way we usually play. And as soon as you start to realize that instead of playing like it's like more like playing a chess match as opposed to like um uh, like instead of just meeting a person one on one or
mhm,
playing a game one on one and moving on to the next team. It's more like a back and forth. You have to make a certain move, and based on the move that is made, you have to play a certain way in order to win the game. And as soon as the first option in a Budenholzer offense is identified, um, uh, that sort of it dissolves. It dissolved against LeBron and the Cavs in the Hawks series when he was
right,
the coach of the
twice,
Hawks. And each time he's come into the playoffs, Giannis plays a certain way. And once teams are able to sit down and play the chess match to the end, instead of having to just take one move and move on to the next team, they
right,
are able to win because they know it's very predictable what this team is going to do.
right. And I think, see, the reason I bring up Budenholzer during game 4, right? Like, I don't blame game 4 on the players. I blame game 4 on the coach.
Hmm.
Because I reason I say he's up and down. Game 1, it's a 3-point loss. It happens one now and then, but game 2 they just blow out the Hawks by like
Hmm.
30 points or
Hmm.
40 points at one point.
Yeah.
Game 3, they come back. Chris Middleton takes them to the win.
Right.
So you have two
Hmm.
great games where you schemed really well.
Hmm.
And the next game you come to game 4 and you shoot 43s when you know you don't have Trae Young. So
Hmm.
you attack the basket or you just absolutely destroy them defensively. You
Right.
don't have the best player on the opposite side.
Hmm.
And you were down by 13 after 2 quarters after having a completely healthy team. And you
Hmm.
were down 13 against a bad team.
Hmm.
Let's be real, like there's no all-stars on that team. There's just a couple of good players here and there. Lou Williams was carrying most of the load.
Hmm.
And they had more
Yeah,
assists
lemon pepper
assists than
Lou.
normally. So
Yeah,
right,
lemon
so
pepper Lou is coming out there
yeah,
cooking. It's crazy. That's his first playoff start ever.
right.
That's crazy.
And so yeah, and I mean it's sometimes I feel like so the reason I bring him up again is if they win the championship this year, which I still think they will, I think they'll get past the series and they'll win the championship because
Hmm.
they're the best team left. Um, People like I feel like the fact that he wins a championship should not mean that Budenholzer shouldn't get fired. I still think he should get fired after this season
Hmm.
because he got you a championship this year and in a playoff that was just injury riddled. And I don't think they can recreate the success next year for
Hmm.
sure. Brooklyn's coming out strong. You got Philadelphia, hopefully with a better Ben Simmons. That's a
Or
whole
maybe
different
another
issue.
player
Yeah, or another player, right?
who can
Like,
take a
but
shot.
probably with a better team. So you got this whole other realm that's gonna come in next year. And you got these draft picks, you got Detroit, you got all these guys coming back. So I don't know. I think you still fire him, and it's gonna be like an abnormality in NBA history where you fire the coach after he wins a championship. But this championship, you know how people call LeBron's championship last year a cakewalk championship
Hmm.
because he played in Disney World and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
This championship is going to be more of a cakewalk than LeBron's championship.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to downgrade a championship, but it's a championship earned not because your team played well, it's because the other teams had so many injuries.
Yeah,
So that's my view on Budenholzer. I think it's just a very frustrating team and coach.
yeah. I just I would say like I mean you can't say oh like any championship is worse than another. Like oh he like every single year there's gonna be something. The
But no, okay,
Warriors
but
in
let's be real.
2015.
But be real
Yeah,
though. There's not been a year like this where you have had so many injuries
yeah.
to
Like
such good players.
I mean, so many injuries, sure, but like the injuries are so widespread that everyone's getting injured. So I mean, at that point,
Okay,
everything
but
sort
look
of
at the players who get injured though. It's
yeah,
not guys like, I don't know, like Drew Holiday or something. Holiday is a great player, but it's like
yeah,
really, really good players like Anthony Davis, Jamal Murray, Kawhi
yeah.
Leonard.
That's in the West though. Like in the
Oh, okay,
East,
but look at the East. You
in the
got
East,
Kyrie
yeah,
Irving down,
yeah. Kyrie goes down after 2 games. Then Harden comes back.
but Harden's
He's
basically injured.
he's injured, but I don't know. Like yeah, he's injured. But he's playing. Um, uh, and then I don't know. It's like you sure you say like oh all these players were injured, um, like so then why aren't the Bucks injured? I think the
No,
only
and the
reason
Bucks did just get an injury though. Like
yeah
it's late in
yeah
the postseason, but
Giannis
they just got injured.
Giannis has a hyperextended knee. I'm just saying like if everyone had the same off season and people are injured all throughout because most except for Atlanta which is new and up and coming and the Suns the other teams were in the bubble. Um, uh,
Yeah, but
and
Milwaukee exited after the second round. Like they got gentlemen swept. And so
yeah,
they left the bubble a while ago.
well, not okay. Well, like 2 weeks later.
Two,
Well, two
three
weeks
weeks. But
early.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I just get like each year you can always say like, sure, this year especially so there are injuries, but I would say that there were injuries everywhere. That there were
Yeah.
that the injuries were so widespread that I just kind of cancels out the injuries. Like sure, LeBron and Anthony Davis injuries on the Western Conference side. Anthony Davis is injured because he's injured. He was injured on the Pelicans. He gets injured. LeBron James being injured. He was injured in 2019 or 2018
Yeah,
when he
they
first joined the
like his
Lakers.
first Lakers year, yeah.
And I think is it a groin injury or is it an ankle injury with LeBron? I think
Ankle.
an ankle injury. And
Oh,
even
back then it was a groin injury. Now it's an ankle
yeah,
injury.
right. Yeah. So like LeBron doesn't get injured too often. At least if when he does get injured, he doesn't stay out in the entire season. So I mean, AD being injured, I don't think that's a result of the shortened season. More, I think it's more so that he just gets injured, and I also think the way big men play in today's game, where those big guys have to go out and stand near the 3 point line and guard, or they need to at least get pushed outside of the paint in order to
Right.
guard. They have to push up when playing the pick and roll, and they can't just sag back. At least not all the time, because shooting talent and pushing the amount of space in which players will operate and take shots and make shots,
Right.
it means that bigger guys are just going to be more injured more often because they got to move 7 foot 7 foot, 260, 270 pounds of themselves out there and do agile things. The reason Anthony Davis is a good defender and he's a good player is because as a big guy, he's very agile. But a part of being agile and having a great motor in terms of movement means that when you try to stop or you try to do something very athletic as a guy that large, you are much more likely to be injured. Same thing with Joel Embiid. In the Hawks series, they did choke, yes, but he was injured for a couple of those games in the middle. He got back his strength. He got back his sort of mojo, I guess, um, him back in game 6 and 7. But earlier on in the series, I think he did land
Yeah,
awkwardly
he
and he
landed
was
pretty
injured
hard.
early on. So um, uh, that's why someone who like goes out and defends all those positions and has a great offensive load in today's era is just going to get more injured more often. Just because of the amount of like weight and strength. The way Jokic works is he isn't this athletic defender who is very motile and moves around and shifts his feet very well. He doesn't do that, not nearly as well as these other big men, and so he doesn't get as injured. I think the way he plays is very shifty. He can generate space just by rising up over an individual, but
Right.
he isn't the type of person to go and slide his feet and move out to the 3 point line and contest a shot or do a great deal of physical post moves. Anthony
Mhm.
Davis and Joel Embiid are known for being physical in the post in order to get a shot every once in a while, but Jokic just either athletically it doesn't do that. And so I think it's just better for his long term endurance as a big guy because he doesn't have to be as injured because there's so much of him.
Yeah, and I'm curious about this, just like moving to the Suns Clippers series. Like,
Hmm.
why do you think the Clippers are playing so well, right? Like you'd expect without Kawhi, they would be just, average team.
Hmm.
Paul George wasn't having an amazing postseason before Kawhi left, but now this man is putting up solid 35 points per game, basically
Hmm.
every game. Couple bad games here and there, but that happens. But now he puts up 41 in game
Yeah.
five, staves off elimination.
Hmm.
So like, do you think I think the bigger question is Paul George the if you had to choose as the face of the Clippers, right?
Hmm.
Like Kawhi has a contract, he's gonna have to opt in next year if he chooses to. But next year, if you're Steve Ballmer, if you're Ty Lue, who do you want to keep the face of the franchise? Like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George?
Yeah. I would say that okay. First, the reason why the Clippers are playing well, I think, and why there's some sort of like uptick in terms of their production from their role players as opposed to the regular season. Um, uh, I really do think it's because the Lakers are out. Um, uh,
Yeah.
I just think like especially after last year, like the Lakers win, the Clippers choke. There's this bad sense of emotion. The Clippers are a losers town. Clippers are a loser. Are a losers team. They have the winning. It's like siblings. Like you have this winning sibling and you got this losing sibling, and they're always being compared to the winning sibling.
Right.
And all these Lakers fans are as Lakers fans always have been just terrible in terms of like awful, absolutely awful when it comes to treating other teams with any sort of respect, like at all.
It's
Um,
only
uh,
the Clippers.
huh?
It's only
Yeah,
the
but the
Clippers.
Clippers are the easiest team. So like the Lakers don't want to go against a good team. They don't want to rag on a good team. They want to rag on a bad team or a team that
Okay, we'll
chokes.
see next
Easy
year. We'll see
fodder.
next year.
Easy fodder. That's who the Lakers and Lakers fans want to. And then you combine LeBron James fans with the Lakers fan base. That's why it's so bad right now. And so you got this sense in the Clippers locker room that the I would say the Lakers are gone. They're out. You don't have to deal with any Lakers fans, or you don't have to deal with any sort of pressure that the Lakers are here, they're the winning team, we aren't a good team, they're a good team.
Right.
And you also don't have to deal with the pressure of having expectations to succeed. In the first year here, in the first year of that team, The Clippers came in saying that we can beat the Lakers. We have the talent to beat the Lakers. We can be the team of Los Angeles now. So they have this pressure on them, especially because Kawhi's on the floor. And Kawhi on the Spurs beat the Heat in the finals. And Kawhi was known for being a LeBron stopper in that series. There's a famous meme where LeBron is at the free throw line,
Oh
sees
yeah,
the
he says,
Kawhi, checks in, it
yeah.
goes like that. Um,
All
uh,
right, LeBron stopper maybe he averaged like 28 points per game, but yeah, he slowed down LeBron.
yeah, I mean, okay. LeBron averaged 28 points per game. Like that's because he has the ball in his hands all the time. In that
Also,
series at least.
he's the
I'll,
greatest of all time. Just say it.
no, no.
One
Um,
day, one day.
his usage rate is very high in that series, and that's
Because
why he
he's the
gets 28
best.
points per game. Like they still lost. I think they lost 4-1
Yeah, that's just
to
yeah.
that Spurs team. So I mean, it's because his usage rate was very high in that
Yeah,
series.
but
But whatever. So you have this team that has a lot of pressure. Now they don't have any pressure. They're a losers team. They aren't expected to win, and even more so now. Kawhi is out. Now the team is very light. There's no expectation this year for the Clippers to do anything.
right.
There's a lot of sort of freedom. So the way I kind of think of it is, um, superstars perform well in high pressure situations. Role players perform well in low pressure situations.
True.
A
Yeah.
superstar in a low pressure situation doesn't have to perform well, but probably dump off the ball to role players who will rise up and have great games. In a high pressure situation, one that involves a lot of expectation and meeting expectation, a superstar will generally perform well. And that's what makes them a super instead of a star, a
Yeah.
superstar instead of a star. And so that sort of situation arises when you have a person like Kawhi on the floor. He's won championships, NBA Finals MVPs. He is the quote unquote go to guy. So you go there and you think, this is a superstar. We can go to a championship. There's pressure on us. Once Kawhi is gone, suddenly role players don't feel that pressure anymore. They perform like stars or superstars may be able to because the pressure is gone. And so that's why you have someone like Terrence Mann, who's a great player. Um, uh, he kind of reminds me of a Marcus Smart sort of player,
Yeah.
but better than Marcus Smart. Um, uh, Starting to rise up, starting to develop. It allows it allows the Clippers team to perform better. And Paul George, a guy who was considered a superstar, kind of folded under the pressure, also known for competing against LeBron on that Pacers team. He took LeBron and that big three Heat to a game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. He was great throughout the series.
Right.
Um, uh, that Pacers team, he was the best player on that team. That team was in terms of talent, other than Paul George, wasn't that great. So
Yeah.
suddenly, the pressure on Paul George, he folds under the pressure in a game 7. And a similar situation has arisen now. He's folded in very high pressure situations against the Mavericks. It was Kawhi who had to rise up and take over the game in order to win. And against the Jazz, once Kawhi goes down, suddenly the pressure is gone. Everyone expects the Jazz to win that series. He gets to go out and perform because there's no pressure anymore. He can rise up to the situation. As a rhythm player, he needs the ball in his hands a lot. He is more so a ball controller like a Luka, as opposed to a finisher like a Kevin Durant.
Right. Yeah. I think like I mean I think but I mean feel like Paul George. So the reason I asked that question, I guess we'll wrap up after this, is Paul George is like I think he's been the face of a franchise, like for a more extended period of time.
Right.
And he, like you said, with the Pacers, and like he's been the face of the franchise with the Pacers. He had the MVP season with Westbrook and the Thunder. Compared to Kawhi, I think other than that Raptors season, he was, I guess, the face of the franchise with the Spurs, but that was with the prime LaMarcus Aldridge as well.
Hmm.
But like, I don't think, and with Manu Ginobili still on the team, even though he was really old at that point. So I don't know. I feel like if Kawhi were to say walk out after next season, say, you know what, there's not enough help here. I personally think you don't kind of force him to stay. I think you let him walk out. You use that salary to get a guy and trade maybe for like a guy like Karl Anthony Towns or someone who's, you can build towards the future. I think Kawhi is a win now guy. And I don't think the Clippers are a win now team. I think they need to look ahead because Kawhi is going to turn 30. So he's getting into that 30 threshold
Hmm.
where Steph Curry is, where, other players, Durant is. So he's in that stage of his career. And Kawhi is in a mode for, I'd say ring chasing. Well, Paul George is not necessarily in the mode of ring chasing right now. He still has a couple years before he gets there because he's got a lot more to prove compared to Kawhi, who's already proved enough. So I think if you were to leave, you let him walk out the door. You use that cap space to bring somebody else in. And for
Paul
Kawhi,
George is 31.
yeah, but Paul George, I mean, accomplishment wise, Paul
Yeah.
George has not achieved as much as Kawhi. So Kawhi's already past that point. Two championships, two finals MVPs. So and he's got defensive player of the year or all defensive player mention and stuff like that. So he's well past where he needs to be. And Kawhi's a first ballot Hall of Famer easily. And
Hmm.
so he's already there while Paul George isn't there yet. So it's different situations. If Kawhi does leave, he hopefully joins a contender, maybe in the East or the West, wherever it may be. But I think the Clippers, you look at Paul George, and I feel like that's why they signed him to that 4-year deal, right? The 4-year extension. They look at him and say, like, you can build a franchise around this guy. Compared to Kawhi, it's like you win now or I leave. He did that with Toronto, did that with San Antonio, kind of. So I guess that's just the whole situation of the Clippers, the NBA, and that all that.
Hmm. Yeah. And just one last thought. I was thinking if you're thinking like if Kawhi leaves, um, uh, I don't know. I always think like a trade for the Warriors.
Oh,
If you throw the seventh, 14th pick, the seventh pick, the
I
14th
don't.
pick, you throw in Wiggins and you throw in like I don't know, maybe a future first round pick, and then you get Kawhi onto the Warriors as a
I
power
I
forward,
I
or
honestly,
or he would be maybe a small forward like you have,
yeah,
yeah, probably small forward. You put Draymond on power forward. I think that Warriors team. I don't know if the Warriors would ever do this, but they did that with Kevin Durant. They got a superstar, so
yeah,
I don't
but
know.
I think see Kevin Durant was a whole maybe now it's been 5 years ago. It's a whole 5 years ago, and so I feel like you trade for Kawhi now. Kawhi's not staying in long term. He's not staying in Golden State for long term. He's
Hmm.
giving you this 2-year window. You win the championship in those 2 years, or he walks out again.
Right.
Steph Curry is aging. He's still great, but he's aging. You got to find I feel like you have to use this draft pick that you have, this number 7 draft pick,
To find a
because clearly
future.
Wiseman's not the guy.
Yeah.
Like he's
Well,
not the guy you can
well,
build around. For
well,
now, he's a long-term project.
yeah. Well, I think Bam also. I think Wiseman could be like a better version of Bam. Bam
Yeah.
was bad his first year. Like I don't know. Like, we'll talk about
Yeah.
the
Be-
Warriors things later, but yeah.
Yeah, but just to like wrap it up, I feel like you guys need to use this number 7 pick to take somebody to build a franchise around because soon people are gonna start walking out the door. We don't know how much longer Draymond has, how much longer. Because I feel like without once Steph leaves, there's really not much utility for Draymond.
Hmm.
So I mean, the Warriors are in a tough situation. If you get like a really good young player, take them. Like if you get a guy like I don't know who's a really good young player these days. Say someone on the caliber of Devin Booker. He's not gonna get traded, but someone like Devin Booker, you
Yeah,
bring him
maybe if
on. But
Luca leaves the Mavs.
yeah, so we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's it.
for our podcast, loose
Yeah.
takes. See you next time.
See you next time.